Hello, viewers. Thank you so much for bearing with me. Welcome to the deep dive. I'm Erik Voss. I was beginning this stream about 10 minutes ago. Didn't realize that I was still on studio mode during this stream. So let me know if I sound weird or if there's just something off about the audio here. I'm doing this kind of with some remote support from my buddy John Costa, but right now I'm just with you all in the woods with Anna, and it's a scary time here on the Last of Us finale. We really begin right in the middle of things. We just go straight from the HBO bumper into this. Okay, so what is this right now? If you're new to the Deep Dive channel, welcome. Thank you so much for spending your Sunday night with me. It's such an honor to have you joining me to chat about this amazing finale of this HBO season of content. What I think was one of the best, if not the best, video game adaptations we've ever seen on screen. So the Deep Dive is the first secondary channel in the new Rockstars Digital Network. We launched back in February, and I am overjoyed with the support, the generous, beautiful, wonderful support that we've gotten, that we've seen so far in our first 10 videos. And I'm just blown away. I did not think we'd have this kind of success out the gate. We'll see how long we can keep this party going. But what we're going to be doing here tonight is doing what I call a live breakdown of something. In this case, it's going to be the finale episode of The Last of Us. And yes, there are going to be a lot of spoilers. In fact, really, really be careful out there in the chat, because I did take some precautions, but there's a lot of people in the chat who have played all the way through part 2 of the games. I'm only going to be talking about part 1 of the games, because that's how far this finale went. But at the end of this, I may start to dip into some spoilers for part 2 of the games, but just be careful out there. And if you have played part 2 of the games, just know that there's a lot of people in the chat right now who haven't. So just, exercise caution out there. But I'm going to be going through this episode chronologically and reacting to it along with you. I'm going to be taking your burning questions. I want to hear your theories. Hit me up in the chat. I want to thank everyone for joining me in the chat right now. Let's see. I see Aiden Burt. I see Brian S. I see Whiskey Delta 6, Jerry, Devin Posey, Reese Williams, Joe Mama. Oh my goodness. Jacqueline, and Chondo, Blue Monkey G. You guys are champions for joining us. I know some of you were here from the get-go, who might have been part of the other stream. If you're still there, hopefully you found your way over to this one, because I didn't realize when it created a new one, it would have created a new stream. So hopefully you guys found us over here. So yeah. Send me your chats. I'll try to answer all the super chats I can. I'll make that a priority, because I love all you for joining me. So let's talk about this episode. And the best way to support the deep dive is, hey, we got merch. What I'm wearing right now is our deep dive hoodie. It's super warm and cozy. I got a deep dive cosmonaut. We call it the Vossmonaut guy. That's really the best way to support. You go over to nerdriot.shop. That's our merch store. Okay, so what do we see in this opening scene? We see Ashley Johnson as Anna. So as you know, if you played the games, Ashley Johnson played and voiced Ellie, and it drives me nuts when you hear other critics say, "Oh, who was the voice of Ellie or the voice of Joel in the games?" They were so much more than just the voice. They brought these characters to life with their physical performance, their facial expressions. That's why people love The Last of Us games so much, is you can feel these characters' heartbreak, their pain, their anger, their joy, their humor. And it was because actors like Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson, Merle Dandridge, physically performed these characters in mocap suits. And I'm really glad that they brought them into the show. So it's fascinating where this episode begins. We start with Anna, just her breaths, her frantic breaths as she's going into labor. This whole archetype of a woman running through the woods is pretty familiar, I think, to people who watch horror. I know in Evil Dead, there's a moment where just like a woman's running alone in the woods. The fact that she's pregnant too gives it some interesting. How do I describe this? It's almost like Moses' mother just kind of sprinting toward the Nile, right? A pregnant woman, or a woman with a young child who doesn't have much prospects for her own survival, who now her main priority is how can I get this kid that I'm about to deliver to safety. And especially now that we know that Ellie is going to be someone in an opportunity to save all of what's left of humanity. Uh, but it just puts us in these immediate stakes. What's also interesting to note is that these are the woods outside of Boston. We see the Boston skyline outside in the background in a moment. Oh, getting a view of my bottoms there. Um, and it is, these are the same woods that the kid we saw when we jumped to the present day in episode 1 we're walking through. And that was another example of just like a lone person just kind of making their way through the woods. We don't really know what's going to happen to them, and it's pretty haunting. We also just hear the snarling runner behind her, but we don't see her, and it's especially creepy in this wide shot, as it's from the point of view of someone in the upper floor. In fact, we think that there might be someone in this house, and it kind of gives us a bit of hope, but we don't see it. It's kind of like, wow, she's got a bit of a lead on this clicker, but the fact that it's still chasing her just tells us these things will not stop. And it's horrifying. It's not like you can lose the scent or get away from them if you just get enough distance. They're going to keep chasing you to the ends of the earth. It reminds me of the movie It Follows, one of my favorite horror films from the past 10 years. Just incredible. I used to have this running app called Zombies Run, where you would just have, music playing or whatever, and then every once in a while, if you started to slow down, they'd have some sounds of zombies in the distance getting louder and louder to encourage you to run. And if you kept running more and more, you'd unlock achievements. So let's check into the chat here. I believe I saw a super chat not too long ago that I want to shout out. Yeah, Don Donster, thank you so much. Don writes, Eric, so happy you're doing this. Make more of these, please. I would love to, Don. That's going to be my goal, is to try to keep up with this as much as I can. Thank you so much for your support. All right, so what happens next? Well, Anna runs into the house here. She's looking for help. She's looking for backup. We think that the Fireflies are going to be here. It's the Firefly safe house. The title of this episode is Look for the Light, which, of course, is the second half of the Fireflies mantra. If you're lost in the darkness, look for the light. And the first episode of the season was called If You're Lost in the Darkness, or When You're Lost in the Darkness. And then this episode's called Look for the Light. And it's pretty ironic once you know what happens to the Fireflies and their cause in this episode. It is completely obliterated. Let's see. I just got another super chat from D. Demetrius, thank you so much for your support, T. And then Jota Suave, just wanted to say thanks for everything. I've been watching since the new Rockstars news / debrief days. Well, you've been with us for a long time, Jota. Thank you so much for the support over all the years. If you even know what new Rockstars news or debrief is, you're definitely an old timer. So yeah, it's pretty ironic for this episode to be called Look for the Light, because yeah, the Fireflies just get wrecked in this episode. And as they should, you could argue. I want to know in the chat below, we'll be talking about this throughout the stream, did Joel make the right choice? That's really the big question from this episode. And the fact that Anna right now is looking for the light, she's looking for backup in this house, and Marlene's nowhere to be found. Well, what does that tell you? What does that tell you? The room that she's in right now has like traffic signs and trucks on the curtains. So she's in like a nursery or a kid's bedroom. Just kind of interesting how she naturally made her way over there. And Ashley Johnson's just so good in this scene. Just a reminder that, she did both voice and play Ellie in the games. And it's just kind of uncanny for people who've played the games that when you hear her scream, we're hearing Ellie's screams. And then that kind of like cross fades into the baby screaming when she delivers it. So it's just so interesting that she gets to play both parts of these characters. And this scene is not in the game. This is Anna, we have heard in the game, Marlene brings her up, but we don't actually see Ellie's birth. So again, the fact that we're going back here, but we still don't know the exact origins. There's no father. It's just, like Anakin's mom Shmi just saying there was no father. Like, it's just kind of so mysterious, and it just gives Ellie this kind of divinity. And I think it's interesting, over the years people have pointed out that the name Ellie is derived from the Hebrew El, it's derived from Eleanor or Ellen, whatever, but the Hebrew El is God. It translates to God. So I think there is there's something there. There's some significance to that. what a horrifying moment this is. I gotta say, they do such a good job building up the tension and the horror. And she pulls out the switchblade knife that, Ellie later gets. When this runner bursts in on all fours, I lost it. Like, I knew that this thing was coming. We saw it in the promo, but just props to this actress who came in, by the way. And already, what do we see here in the foreground? The mouth tendrils are out, guns a-blazing, right? She just kicked open the door, like, boom, 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 ready to get you. And as she wrestles with her, it's like these things are really at the tip of the spear as they're trying to reach her mouth. And it's all shot so well because we don't see the exact moment the bite happens. So we don't really know if the bite happened before the baby came out. But either way, the baby came out, the umbilical cord was still attached. So it kind of leaves it in this nebulous state of like, how exactly did this work? How exactly did Ellie's immunity come about? Later, we find out from Marlene, according to their doctor, that he believed that it was with her since birth. Well, was it since birth or since conception? Was it genetic or something specific to the timing of the birth? The implication of this, the fact that we're seeing it at all, implies that there's something about this attack in this moment that just kind of gave Ellie this uniquely timed, fortunate circumstance of having just enough of an inoculation of the cordyceps. And inoculation probably isn't the right word to use because it's not a virus, it's a fungal infection, but maybe antibodies of some kind that allowed her to have a piece of the cordyceps in her body, snaking its way through, but not enough of it to really kill her. Let's see. Trying to keep up with the super chats here. Rant Almore, thank you so much. It's about choice. Joel could have killed everyone but the doctor and waited for Ellie to wake up and ask her. Yeah, so Joel, Rant is talking about the big choice that Joel makes at the end of the episode. Yeah, it's a very interesting point, Rant. Yeah, I think it is all about choice. But, he's driven by a lot of different things here. Okay, but yeah, so I used to think that, when I first viewed this, I'm like, well, Ellie, it might be a genetic thing. And that's why she has that unique thing. And really what she's going through here is her first test. It's really just the first test is this exposure to cordyceps that her mother gets here. But I think the implication here is that this is like her mother's last parting gift, this connection through the umbilical cord. Can I just say, I'm not an expert, I'm not an OBGYN, and it kind of drives me crazy when movies and TV shows are doing this a lot. In Black Panther Wakanda Forever, when Namor gets his, mutant activation, it's implied that it had to do something with his pregnant mother ingesting the talocanil heart-shaped herb, and it's just like, can we stop putting out more confusing science fiction about the prenatal health process? I feel like there's enough confusion among society right now about what happens to pregnant women when they're holding a child and what happens to that child in the womb. I get it. It is enough of a mystery that it's fun to kind of insert interesting little fictional tidbits in there. But it's just great. Okay, there's just gonna be more education we have to do out there through whatever means to just tell people this is what. Can we just all just accept right now that do not ever draw any lessons from science fiction or fantasy to what happens to pregnant women in zombie apocalypses and compare it to what happens in the real world. This is fiction. Let's just all be on the same page about that. Okay, my rant is over. Okay. Oh, we just had a great shot there of the tendrils coming out. And I just love that. This is after Anna has stabbed this thing in the neck. And it's still, in its dying grasp, is still trying to hit those tendrils in her mouth. So it kind of implies that the cordyceps are just telling us that it doesn't need even the cordyceps to still be fully alive, that it kind of has some death throes that it can still work with. It's just horrifying. Okay, if you've just joined us, if you haven't figured it out already, we are doing a spoiler live stream discussion, a live breakdown of The Last of Us finale. My Easter egg breakdown of the finale will be on the main new Rockstars channel tomorrow. Also tonight, if it's not up already, let's see, it was Anna and Jessica and Brandon did an amazing reaction to this episode and on the break room. So be sure to watch their discussion because I'm really excited to hear what the three of them kind of come to when it comes to whether or not Joel had made the right decision there. Okay, so I'm gonna skip ahead because there's baby stuff. Okay, so this is so sweet. this moment with Anna and Ellie, and it's just beautiful. And I love how Ashley Johnson's screams just dissolve into the baby's screams. It's like just the voice of Ellie is all over the scene, and it's just so wonderful. I mean, Ashley Johnson is an actress that, like, I feel like I've spent my entire TV watching life with. She played Chrissy Seaver in Growing Pains, and already showed that she could be like a precocious youngster. And when she was a young actress, has played a number of roles over the years. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, she played the waitress that Steve Rogers kind of crushes on in the 2012 Avengers movie, a plot line that got reduced down. She really just has a cameo at the end of that movie. Let's see, another super chat. Sarah Hachadorian says the juxtaposition of Ellie's autonomy against David in episode 8 versus her having no choice or control in her future in this episode hit hard. Yeah, Sarah, what an interesting idea there. I completely agree with you. And there's a specific line that they changed from the game that plays into the way they depicted things in episode 8 that we'll talk about later. If I don't, remind me. Okay, so yeah, just a beautiful moment here. I mean, I was definitely tearing up when I watched this the first time. And yeah, so what happens here is very interesting. You would think this entire scene in the past of Ellie's birth and when Marlene finds her would be contained within the pre-credits prologue of the episode, but instead they split it in two. So we go from the moment of Ellie's birth now into the fungal outgrowth credits, and then on the other side of this, we'll go back into the flashback scene when Marlene finds her hours later. So it gives a different framing and context to these opening credit imagery. We have this fungal outgrowth that we've seen every episode, and it's just beautiful the way Gustavo music it blends with all this. It looks like a city right now, and we see like a map of the USA that it kind of looks like. And then from here it goes into like a person's face. But whereas before we could kind of draw our own conclusions of it, now it kind of feels like the cordyceps that is making its way through Anna and Ellie's bodies in this moment. Because we go from Ellie being born, Anna freaking out that her daughter is going to have this as well, to Merle Dandridge, Marlene finding her, and that's the big debate. So now it kind of feels like we're seeing two women who are composed of this cordyceps fungus. And so now I can't help but see this as Anna, as Ellie's mom. And the famous shot of this opening credits are these two fungal outgrowths that we've, of course, always seen as Joel and Ellie. Another way to look at this now, based off the way they edited this opening, is this is Ellie and her mother. These are two pieces of the fungus. And this is kind of like, the old Christian story of two sets of footprints on the beach, and there was one at one point. You turn around and says, well, where were you then, Jesus? And Jesus is like, those are the moments I was carrying you. That's kind of what Anna has been doing for Ellie all this time. Anna has been by Ellie's side and has been carrying her. How? By giving her the gift of cordyceps. Because without that parting gift through the umbilical cord, Ellie would have died back in the mall. Ellie would not be as significant a figure. She wouldn't have had that infection gift that she could use to get away from David last episode. So that's just another way you can look at it. I still ultimately think the real pairing of this series is Joel and Ellie. Don't get me wrong. I just think that's another way to look at it based off of the framing. Okay, so as I said, we come back to it now, and only now does the light find Anna after after she's already been bitten. We don't really know what we're gonna find, and it's pretty scary. Even though we know what Ellie benefits from. Sorry, my stream is a little caught behind here. But one thing that it's this interesting debate, and we know Ellie's gonna get out of it okay. It's all gonna be fine. But the real fear is that something has happened, or that Anna might be already turned. We just don't really know what we're gonna find. It's horrifying. Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm ahead. It's like, okay, cool. And she lies. Isn't that interesting that Anna says that Ellie, that she cut the cord before she was bitten? She doesn't know when exactly it happened. She looked down and was surprised to see it there. She didn't know she was bitten, and then she cut the cord. So just keep that lie in mind, because this episode opens with this lie and it ends with a different lie. In this case, it's a lie to save Ellie. And at the end of the episode, it's also a lie to save Ellie. And so Ellie seems to be haunted by this idea of this lie. So one thing that we're talking about in this series is the destructive, toxic power of lies. And that's something that Craig Mazin, who is the head writer of the series, and Neil Druckmann, of course, who did all the writing for the games and created the concept for the games, have talked about. Quick side chat. Rudy, thank you so much for the super chat. My heart is broken all over again. I think worse than I played the game. Yeah, I felt that several times while watching this. So this idea of the destructive power of love, Craig brought it up in the After Show podcast when the series premiered. And I think we who play the games knew where he was going with that. Like, what happens when someone is so driven by unconditional love that they're willing to make crazy, stupid decisions in the name of that love? Because we've always assumed that love is a great thing in fiction, that the power of love is a great redemption, and that if you do something for love, it can't be wrong. Well, not on this series. They've talked about how sometimes love can drive us to do really destructive things, which Joel definitely does. And this idea of this lie that this episode begins with, it's not even a noble lie. Like when I analyzed The Dark Knight Rises, I talked about the idea of the noble lie that is told to spare Gotham the truth. This is not even a noble lie. This is a selfish lie, or at least not so much selfish, but to try to just spare this one baby's life. In a way, it's like the selfish lie on behalf of the parent. It's a desperate lie. But it's not necessarily good for mankind that this lie happened. And that's a theme that was so huge in Craig Mazin's past HBO series, Chernobyl. The theme of that series was, what is the cost of lies? It's the opening line of the series. We hear Legasov say that in his recording. And you could see that coursing through this episode. What is the real cost of lies? And it's just so interesting how these themes come back again and again and again. So we're on the road into Salt Lake City right now. And one thing that I think the show does a really good job of at this point is making Ellie kind of distant. She spaces out. Joel has to repeat himself. She's just clearly distracted. And that was something that's interesting in the game. Like, what's running through Ellie's head right now? And now we see what's running through her head. She kind of has this, like, fear that all the people who have died just to kind of get her to the next stage, it might not be totally worth it. She kind of has this survivor's guilt. Joel has the Chef Boyardee ravioli that calls back earlier in the season when they were chowing down on that stuff. He found Boggle in this RV back here. If you play the game in the RV, it's actually pretty sad. You find like the family photo, and on the back it says "Forgive us" on it. So they don't get into that here, but he does find Boggle, so that's good news. Ultimately, it just feels like Joel is nesting now, and he's clearly on the other side of that decision to view Ellie as his daughter figure, and he's ready to settle down with her. He's making plans for the future. He talks about how he saw a guitar in the RV. And this is a similar conversation that happens here in the game. Joel talks about how he used to play guitar and that he'd like to teach Ellie how to play guitar. And that's gonna be a big deal in part 2 of the game. And I assume season 2. We did see that Joel had his guitar back in his home in Austin back in episode 1. So moving ahead now, we get into Salt Lake City, and it's just kind of interesting. He has this moment of they reach an impasse, and Joel is like, so here's what we're gonna do, and Ellie's like, let me guess, we're gonna cut through the building and move around, and he's like, no, I found some dynamite back there. And he's like, I thought it's just interesting that Ellie's now kind of a step ahead of him. She's more of his equal now. She has saved his life, I guess you could say, as much as he has saved her life. And as Joel later tells Marlene, it was really her. It was Ellie that got them through all of this. A couple more super chats. Joe Bartolone, appreciate you taking the time to go live, Eric. Well, I appreciate you, Joe, for joining me. Justin Kramer, you were one of the ones who were there in the earlier chat. Thank you so much for sticking around with us. Justin says, Eric, you are the best. Keep up the outstanding work. Thank you so much, Justin. Okay, so a lot of you know what was coming here. The giraffes And I like how we get there a similar way. Like Ellie's supposed to bring up the ladder and just kind of leaves Joel there because she's so excited to see the giraffes. And this giraffe scene, I'm so glad that they included it. I think the VFX on the giraffes look pretty good. Were they real giraffes or VFX? I gotta tell you, the first time I watch these things, I can't really tell. I'm not a VFX artist myself. I have limited understanding of VFX, so yeah. To me, I was like, cool. Some shots were probably VFX, some shots were real. I mean, I think when they were feeding it, the tongue eating that thing, I think that was real. I fed a giraffe at a zoo before. They do have really long tongues like that. What's fun though, in the game, you don't feed the giraffe. You just kind of like run past to try to catch up and find it. The fact that they feed it here reminds me of the scene in Jurassic Park, right, where they're feeding the Brachiosaurus. That's like the one moment that Grant finally connects with the two kids. Giraffes, of course, have been teased throughout this season. There was a stuffed giraffe that they walked by on the ground as they were leaving Boston in episode 2. There was a framed giraffe poster on the wall of the girl back in her bedroom that Ellie was staying in. So they were kind of just letting us know, like, don't worry, the giraffes are coming. Kenneth Smith says, Eric, loved the new channel. This episode made gaming history successfully. Video game series. Yeah, completely agree. Again, I think The Last of Us is the best video game adaptation we've seen to screen yet. I think they've been doing a good job. Lately, they've been getting better and better and better at it. Arcane was fantastic. Sonic was pretty good. Detective Pikachu was pretty great. But this, I think, is definitely a huge leap forward. And it's just clear that Craig Mazin really loved this show and just had he knew exactly what to adapt A to A and what things to change and alter to stay true to it. We get this moment where they both just kind of look out over the, that's gotta be a real giraffe, right? People in the comments are like, dumbass, no, there's fake giraffes. They're going for giraffes. There's too much money. We get this moment where Joel offers Ellie the chance to turn back. And I think it's great that Ellie insists, like, no, it can't all be for nothing. And Joel doesn't know what's coming. He doesn't know what the Fireflies have planned. But for those of us who know what's coming when we rewatch this, it's just kind of sad. It's just really sad to think about how, in a way, at least for the global stakes of all this, their journey here was, you could say, all for nothing. But no, I mean, it's an interesting ethical debate, because what's more important in this post-apocalyptic world that's full of so many rotten people and so many threats, and it's probably irredeemable at this point? In a way, just letting one person or two people find each other and live together, that's worth it. I think that's worth it. One thing we should talk about with the decision to go save Ellie by killing these Fireflies is this dilemma of, would it have even worked? We don't know for sure if it would have worked. But even if it did, Marlene's argument from this doctor was that there was a piece of the cordyceps that was growing in Ellie's brain that made other cordyceps that infects her body think that it's already cordyceps and not go any further than the arm. It's great. Sounds great. Give that to everybody. But what have we been seeing the past 9 episodes? Every time a clicker runs into Ellie, or a bloater comes out of a sinkhole, or runners are chasing her, they don't know that. They still chase her down and try to bite her, and try to infect her, and rip her to shreds, as Tess said. In episode 2, she could still be ripped to shreds. So anybody who gets this is still going to be at risk with the millions of clickers and runners and infected that are everywhere that'll still rip them to shreds trying to get there. Yes, it's probably a good thing if people just have that kind of like immunity when they are bitten, but they still have to be able to like wrestle those things and stab them in the brainstem. I don't know if this would be effective enough. I think it would still slow the inevitable decline of people, but we still have to do more than that. We still have to set up a stable society where we don't kill children, where we at least let them grow up to be an adult and then make the choice if they want to donate their body to science. And I think what Joel might be thinking of, or at least we can judge, is that it's the ends don't justify the means there. If you're going to let yourself be a society that could just kill a kid and in the name of science that might work, that society, as we saw in Kansas City, it's not going to last very long. You're not going to get there to the point where you can inoculate enough of the survivors for it to matter. That's my soapbox here. That's why I think Joel, still made the right decision. Also, if Marlene knows that, or thinks that, the birth process of a pregnant mother being bitten around the moment of birth is what led to Ellie's freak immunity. Don't you think over the past 14 years she would have, I'm not saying this is a morally pure idea, but don't you think she would have tried to get some other pregnant mother out there to get bitten around the time the baby comes out and just seeing if the baby makes it? If it's that important to her, if she's willing to sacrifice a 14-year-old girl right now, don't you think that that would just be like a message you try to get out there? Like, look, if there's just some like, if there's a situation where, a pregnant mom just happens to run into a horde of infected, if she gets bitten, just test the baby afterwards. See if, well, I guess if they tested the baby, they'd have to just sit and watch that baby for a little bit if it was infected. I don't know. I guess the question would be, would Ellie have shown up as infected before she got the bite? We don't know if she was ever scanned. I have to imagine that people in the Boston QZ are scanned on the regular, and then she showed up as clear then. So just a lot of interesting questions. They don't leave us with any firm answers. All right, moving ahead here. They're going through the triage camp, the Army triage camp. This is before Fedra really takes over everything. This is just the Army. And what's interesting here is that this is something that is also not in the game. Joel talks about his scar. And back in episode 3, he said there was someone who shot and missed. He didn't go any further about it. But now we find out that the guy who shot and missed was himself. Now, we know from the games that after Sarah died, Joel considered suicide, but we don't know if he actually went through with it by attempting it until now in the game, or now in the show. It's just this really sad moment, but you have to wonder why he flinched. It could be any number of reasons why someone would flinch in that situation. You could read some fate implications from this, that maybe Joel knew somewhere deep down that there was someone else out there that needed him. I talked about that opening shot in the opening credits, and now feels like, another way of looking at the cordyceps outgrowth in the opening imagery could be Anna and Ellie instead of Ellie and Joel. Maybe we could look at this as that's also Joel and Sarah. That Joel, this whole journey has been walking with a daughter, and that the transition that we've been seeing is Joel's ability to see this daughter next to him the way he looked at Sarah. So it was Sarah who caused him to flinch. It was Sarah who grabbed his hand and moved it a little bit. I'm totally projecting. I completely admit that. I'm just saying, there's a couple of reasons, and you got to imagine at this point Joel might be thinking that. It's also just interesting visually that these two characters have these scars that they've been carrying on their heads. You got Joel with a scar on his temple. Ellie has a little bit more of a mysterious scar on her eyebrow, but it was hinted at in the Riley episode where it was some kind of fire at a 7-Eleven. We don't get more information than that. But just a really wonderfully empathetic scene from Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal, and I really love the way this was played. One thing that I did miss, though, and people who have played the games as well, let me know how you felt about this. They did make a lot of adaptation changes from this stage of the game. I mean, this is like the final area you're at in part 1 of the games, and it gets it's hard. It's really tough. You have to go into the tunnels underground, and they do start to go into the tunnels, it looks like, but very quickly the flashbang grenade, the stun grenade comes out, and they get taken. Whereas in the game, you like go into the tunnels, you have to sneak past a couple bloaters even. It's very hard. And then you get caught in some rushing waters, and it comes up that Ellie can't swim and she nearly drowns. I actually think that they pay homage to that in the scene where they talk about the joke books. She makes the apocalypse joke, like there's no tomorrow. She's like, too soon. He's like, no, it's topical, which I think was great. But she says, what does the green grape say to the purple grape? Breathe, you idiot. Which I might just be reading into it, but like Joel has to perform CPR on Ellie, and he thinks that Ellie might have drowned. I mean, they even set up like at the beginning of the season that Ellie can't swim, so I thought that would come back into play. But they ended up cutting, maybe it was like a budgetary thing, but they cut a lot of the action that happens. It just made it more of like an ethical crisis as opposed to like an active crisis. I was still okay with it. And they completely change a lot that happens in the, well, not, from A to B, but they changed the way it's shown of Joel going through the hospital. I'll talk about that in a bit. Okay, so yeah, this is a scene. It's adapted almost exactly to how it is in the game, where Marlene shows back up. And I've always thought that it's a little narratively convenient that Marlene just shows back up at the end here. I get they were on the road for long enough, and Marlene knew where she was going, and it helps, structurally to have a character who's there at the beginning kind of show back up at the end. I just think, like, she was suffering a pretty bad gunshot wound. It does make you kind of do some math in your head, like, well, then wait, why couldn't Marlene just take her here? Well, she was wounded pretty bad. Her partner was wounded really bad. Joel and Tess were right there. It would have been hard for the leader of the Fireflies to sneak out of the Boston QZ, whereas Joel and Tess could probably do a bit more sneaking. But it just makes you wonder, well, then how did Marlene get out of the Boston QZ at all at that point? But I think what makes it okay is the fact that Marlene's not victorious. That she's punished pretty severely. I think you can get away with a bit of logical convenience. And again, this is what happens in the game. It's exactly what happens in the game. I think you can get away with a bit of logical convenience if the character doesn't survive. It's kind of like story logic punishes a character and just tells the audience, just go with me on this. They're not going to make it to see the next day. So yeah, we talked about this argument that Marlene makes that that she thinks that because there's a piece of the cordyceps in her brain that tells the rest of her, any other cordyceps that enters her system, that will be enough, that they don't need, that the cordyceps doesn't need to extend further in her body. And again, I just call bullshit on that. I think that might provide some immunity for the person who gets bitten, but you have to hope that bite doesn't include the runner, the clicker, the bloater ripping its head off to get there, and we see how violent and how rabid these things are. That's really the bigger threat, is they're going to just rip you to pieces and cause you to bleed out before they infect you. So a society that's willing to sacrifice a kid must have pretty messed up priorities and probably isn't going to last very long. I think the Fireflies, David mentioned he was from the Pittsburgh QZ and it fell apart in a war between the Fedra and the Fireflies. There was a Firefly movement, we think, in Kansas City. So it's just the Fireflies aren't even long for this world. That they aren't really that well of an organized movement. Joel even gets that by telling that one Firefly to F off who tries to recruit him. Yeah, it's a heartbreaking scene. And it's just it's so sad to watch Pedro Pascal get marched out here. And it feels like a long, slower march, but there is a moment where he clocks this, which I just really like that they have that beat. In the game, they it's at the stairwell where Joel is which way? And they're down, dummy. But here, he's looking at the floor plan of the hospital because he's already made his decision. He's going to come back, and he has to. I guess they could have put Ellie anywhere. It doesn't have to be in pediatrics, but she's a kid who's being operated on, so whatever setup they have in pediatrics would probably be the likeliest place they would take her. Okay, so here the episode gets super dark and terrifying. One thing that I really, really loved about this is that when you're playing the game and Joel makes the choice to turn on these guards and go save Ellie, you find yourself in a position where you're playing as a active shooter. And you realize you are now forced to make this choice. And it's you feel kind of gross as you're going through killing all these guys. And it's not easy. When you're playing in the game, you have to duck behind countertops. You have to use misdirection to redirect the guys. You have to pick every battle. Some guys you sneak past, some guys you shoot. And if you shoot, you better make sure you get a headshot because you're going to be dead. It's really, really hard. But here, it's not shot in a thrilling way, this scene. We hear a dark, sad version of the main title theme play through. And every time he shoots someone, the camera goes to his feet and we see the shell hit the floor. So we are taking stock of every single person Joel kills, even if Joel isn't in this moment. We don't really see it from Joel's point of view. It's just kind of it's just haunting to watch Joel make this decision. And I kind of like that we go away from Joel's point of view and instead see it with a kind of judgment, because I think everyone watching this should judge Joel in this moment. We should be questioning if he's making the right decision. And the only way to do that when you're shooting something for a passive audience, like for TV or film, is to do it this way. You have to remove us from the action a little bit. It has to feel kind of inevitable. It feels like an execution. He goes person to person, even a guy who is surrendering, right? Here, I'm just jumping ahead here. There's a guy who surrenders, who does like a Saving Private Ryan surrender, and he shoots him anyway. And there's a logic to it, right? This guy, he's just going to chase him down if he doesn't have time to tie him up. But it's still just like, Joel has crossed a line. He probably crossed that line a long time ago. But when you're playing the game, nothing compares to the feeling of guilt you feel as you're making these moves. It's such a struggle. Normally, when you play a video game, when you're in the final stages, you have that kind of anticipation, that excitement. You're like, I'm so close, I'm so close. Here, you're kind of like, I don't know if I want to play this game anymore because this is awful. Yes, I want to save Ellie, but the things I have to do to save her. So he also picks up the assault rifle, which I'm glad they included a close-up of this detail, because in the game, there is a moment where you finally kill one guy and you're able to pick up an assault rifle, and it's like, all right, yeah. But then you're like, oh, right, yeah. I guess I have an assault rifle now. I'm this guy. All right, so we get to the epic moment, and we're in the pediatrics division. And one thing that happens here, let's see if I can get the right frame. He passes by these animal murals. We see monkeys, as we did back in the back on the East Colorado University. But Joel also passes a mural with we just saw it. There's a giraffe over here. We might have missed it. Anyway, but there is a giraffe. I think that's a giraffe there. So it's just like, there's this nice moment that might remind him of the nice moment that he had with Ellie back by the baseball field, but he's not even thinking about nesting anymore. He's just like seeing tunnel vision. And one thing that I forgot to mention earlier, the music that plays when they look at the giraffes is the Bill and Frank music, where the last day, where Frank's had his last day, both of them had their last day. There's like this beautiful music where it's like, na 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 na, and it's they play it here or back in that moment. And one thing that's great about it is it has this kind of hopeful, sweet, romantic sound to it, but also just like an acknowledgement that the world we're living in is so dark and horrifying. God, I love the music of this series, both the soundtrack choices and the scoring. Okay, so just as it's almost exact what you find in the game, where Joel just kind of tells him to step away, and the main surgeon pulls out the scalpel and says, "I won't let you take her." Joel takes him out. I won't go into anything beyond part one of the game, but yeah, this is an important moment that will come back to haunt Joel. In the game, you also have the option to shoot the two, I assume nurses, but they might be also doctors or surgeons. But Joel doesn't here. He just tells him to turn away. But it is significant that the camera stays with him, with the doctor on the ground. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, I'm going to warn you all before I get into anything that might come beyond this season. Here, I'm going to check in to see. It's been a while since I've talked to you guys in the chat. But thank you all so much for joining the chat. It's just, I can't believe there's 600 of you hanging out with me right now. That's so amazing. Wow, Letdown 27. The 43-minute runtime had me worried. In hindsight, I feel like the episode was actually packaged very well. The boost ladder moment was such a cool nod to those who have played the game. Made me smile. Yeah, completely agree, Letdown 27. Yeah, I think a lot of people say, like, they're annoyed when they watch, especially on Disney Plus, those shows where it's like, it was just a 30-minute episode. What happened to my 43-minute episode? I think the episode only needs to be as long as it needs to be. I think as long as they tell the story and it's a properly effective story, where the characters go through the beats, that's all I really care about. But yeah, I agree. That latter moment was really fun. Carrying Ellie through the hospital is also really hard because you don't get to use your gun or your weapons or your hands anymore. You just got to run past the bullet fire of all these people that you really pissed off by killing their friends. So it's not an easy sprint to the elevator. But it takes us to this critical moment where we're in the parking garage and we run into Marlene. And Marlene raises some interesting points that, what life are you dooming Ellie to? He says it's not your choice to kill her like this, and she goes, it's not your choice either. Like, the right thing to do would be to tell Ellie the truth and let her make the choice. She may feel like giving up her body for science is the right move, but on the other side of that argument, she is a minor. In this world, she's lived through so much. I think she can make adult decisions, but at the same time, she doesn't have all the information. None of these characters have all the information. This is pseudoscience that they're dealing in, and we even saw from the opening scene of the series that the epidemiologists in the 60s didn't really have complete information, and that the world was blindsided by this. They had to go to some mycologist in Indonesia, and she knew how hopeless this situation was. So, one wonders what scientific knowledge advantage Jerry Anderson would have in 2023. So, yeah, I think Joel makes the right choice. As bad as it is to say that the world's worth letting burn, I think the right answer is doing what the people in Jackson do. Just trying to protect yourself, do what you can to mind your P's and Q's, treat each other right, and just grow old together like Bill and Frank did. That's the best way to live our lives in this kind of world. It's not to kill kids in the name of trying to find a cure. That's my opinion, though. This all goes down the same way, and I really, really love the way this is shot. One thing that changes, though, I promised earlier that they do change something with Marlene. Marlene says, like, you're dooming her to be killed by raiders. In the game, she also says she might also get raped by raiders. And, I get that you want to, like, soften these things sometimes. But I think specifically the reason they did that is, like, there was last episode where Ellie was nearly raped by David, and it was pretty extreme. And I think they kind of cross that there, and otherwise they want that to be something that Ellie lives with and deals with, rather than Joel feels some kind of like paternalistic need to protect her from. Because Ellie proved that she didn't need Joel's protection in that moment. She handled herself fine. And that was a major change that they made to episode 8. In the game, Joel pulls Ellie off of David. Here, Ellie just jabs away with the cleaver until she is done. And then she makes the choice to walk outside, and then Joel finds her there. I really love that change. I thought that was fascinating. So, just like it is in the game, we cut away from this moment when Marlene puts the gun down, and you're not really sure what choice Joel is going to make. And we go right away to Joel in the car. And I love that, just like in the opening, where they bisected that scene, they bisect this scene as they do in the game. And Pedro Pascal does something here that, Troy Baker was probably watching like, oh, Pedro Pascal, why do I have to have this amazing actor play the character I played in the games? But he, like, before we even get to that, he, like, closes his eyes and he's just like, oh, I can't believe I did that. And you think for a moment that Joel is regretting leaving Ellie behind with Marlene, that Marlene won him over. But no, the anguish he feels is, I can't believe I just doomed the Earth. Which I think is so interesting that he lives with that guilt now. But we cut to Ellie in the back seat, still in the hospital gown, and Joel tells this lie. Just as Anna lied to Marlene to protect Ellie in the opening scene, Joel lies to Ellie to protect her now. And he says that there were multiple people who were infected, and it didn't work, that they weren't able to find a cure. Basically, he is lying to tell the reality that he suspects might be the case. But he doesn't know. He's lying. He says that all the people who died were killed by raiders, which you gotta imagine, if you're Ellie in the back seat, that's probably bullshit. Like, wait, raiders? Like, this whole time there were fireflies there and the raiders struck right as we got there? There's something you're not telling. Why aren't there other fireflies with us? Why are you covered in blood? Why do you have that firefly patch that you ripped off and made a necklace out of, Joel? There's just, you gotta know Ellie knows what Joel did, or suspects that he's not telling her the truth. There is a great editing moment. I won't play the clip here, but as Joel is talking, right in the middle, he pauses and there's a bang when we cut to Marlene, and then we cut back to Joel. The bang interrupted his thinking, his train of thought. And just as he does in the game, Joel doesn't give Marlene a chance to follow them. And he's right, you know. He says, "No, you're just gonna find us," and ends her life. And it's cold blooded, but it makes sense for Joel in his logic because yeah, the Fireflies are never gonna stop. But what it also tells us is that Joel is fully aware that anybody here at St. Mary's in Salt Lake City that he leaves behind is gonna hunt him down someday. Just keep that in mind. I won't go more into it. Um, but we end back at on our way to Jackson, and I do like that. This is very similar to the game that we do have this like nice, this final little moment where it's not really challenging. It's just for the two characters to connect. Um, Ellie reveals that the one person she hurt was Riley, and she tells Joel the story about Riley, and it's Bella Ramsey plays this scene so well because she this whole episode has had this guilt on her mind, and the guilt's for having to watch Riley die, for having to watch Tess die, for Sam. Joel cuts her off and says it's not on you, but Ellie cuts him off and says, "Swear to me that everything you told me about the Fireflies is true." And as in the game, Joel lies to her. He says, "I swear." I like the shot of Jackson, and we find out that Joel is started to see Ellie and project Ellie and Sarah as being potential friends. So he's already kind of like nesting and living in this like fantasy, this kind of alternate reality, in so many ways that are not accurate or not true. But like, Joel has felt optimistic for the first time, and for the first time he's invoked Sarah, her name, and has allowed himself to think about what her life might have been like. Other than last time he was in Jackson, he saw a woman that he thought was Sarah, but that was like kind of a nightmare for him. Here, it's kind of like a nice dream fantasy, a life that he wished he had. Oh, thank you for the super chat, Tasha. I didn't play the game, so I had no idea how this would end. Amazing. I'm Team Joel. I love this live breakdown, Voss. Thank you so much, Tasha. And if you haven't played the game, just be careful. Listen out for my warning because I will talk about Last of Us Part 2 spoilers. But I just really love that we end with Joel being able to talk about Sarah in particular and how he imagines Sarah and Ellie would be friends. So Ellie talks about how she feels a survivor's guilt, and she puts Joel on the spot. And you know what? I think Ellie totally knows in this moment that Joel is lying to her. And the camera stays on Bella Ramsey's face, and she just kind of like sits with it for a moment, chews on it, and just says, okay. It's a choice for her to say okay, because what she's saying okay to is that, okay, you're willing to lie to me to spare me. That's going to be our relationship now. Okay, you made a choice. You made a lie to spare me. You made a lie to save my life. And that's where we're at. We're going to have this impasse now. I'm going to be fascinated to see when Ellie learns the truth, or if the show shows that moment. I think it's going to be just a very, very interesting acting choice that Bella Ramsey makes. I think she's so great. And that's where we end, is just her saying, okay. And that's the end. I love that we stay on her for so long. And I love that like we open with Ellie from the games, Ashley Johnson. We end with Ellie from the show, Bella Ramsey. It's so beautiful, and it's just so well done from the actors. I cannot give them enough love, because the hardest thing with these shows is they always feel like they have to do more than they actually need to do. And everyone who played The Last of Us games knows, like, you almost could transcribe that beat for beat, and we'd all be here for it. We'd all be okay with it. So the fact that they did, the fact that Neil Druckmann just kind of kept some some of the scenes exactly as they were, but made little surgical choices, I think made it a better show. And the biggest changes that were made were moments like Bill and Frank, where we just got to see their life. We got to see them grow old together, which I think was great. Okay, so I want to hit in the chat. Guys, let me know. Do you think Joel made the right decision or not? I think most people are pro Joel. Ooh, can I put a poll in here? Let's put a poll. Did Joel make the right choice? All right, I just put a poll in the chat. Let's see if that's there. I don't know if it's there. It might have gotten blocked. Okay. I'm curious to see. I think the response is going to be yes, Joel made the right choice, because I think people who played The Last of Us know that you cannot trust this world at all. Um, but okay, so let's talk about part two, and what's coming in season two. So huge spoilers here, huge spoilers coming. Um, let's see. I should have had a graphic on screen to warn people who might tune in. So I'll just like be very careful what words I use, and I'll say spoiler before every sentence just in case people join in the middle of it. Okay, so what I think is going to happen in season two is there is a part two of the games. So far, we don't know if there's going to be part three. Hopefully, yeah, we don't know what Naughty Dog's going to do, but I think they're going to, at least HBO is going to want to get 3 seasons out of this. I think they're going to split part two of the games into 2 seasons, and there's going to be a critical moment that they end part two of the game on, or season two from part two of the game. It happens relatively early in the part two of the games, but I think they'll fit enough story for season two to build up to that, and then it'll make season 3 epic as hell. So they've already started to establish certain things from part 2 of the games. Like, we've already visited Jackson. We've already met Dina, we think. There was the girl that Ellie's like, hey, buzz off. So I think that was Dina. I don't know if that actress will play Dina in season 2, but I think that moment was the first time they met. And we're going to meet... Spoiler warning. We're going to meet a character named Abby. And Abby, spoiler warning again, is the daughter of the doctor that Joel killed. And we learn how Abby would have been willing to sacrifice herself if it was her. And she will never forget the name Joel. And then as you play the game, it's horrifying because you play as Joel, you end up saving a group of people, some fireflies, you think, you don't, and then it ends up being Abby's in that group when Joel introduces himself. Big mistake. And if you're just joining us, spoilers for season 2 for the future of The Last of Us. Spoilers. Please click away if you don't know what happens in part 2 of the games of Last of Us and don't want to know the big twist that happens in season 2 or season 3 of the show. Abby brutally kills Joel with a golf club in front of Ellie. Ellie has to watch, and it's awful. It's awful. And then you end up playing as Abby, and it's like, it's kind of, but it's what the show is all about. It forces you to play as morally compromised characters, and it's just like, it makes you feel guilt as you're playing. It's not always supposed to be fun as you're playing it. It's supposed to be like an interesting introspective process that makes you think about your own moral decision making. So I think that will be the season 2 finale. I think that's where I think they're going to do enough, introduce enough side information to build up to that, because it's such a huge moment. I think they're going to want to get another full season of Pedro Pascal. Either that, or we might... here's a fun idea that I had. I think they might flash back to some Outbreak Day stuff. We might spend an entire episode in Pittsburgh on Outbreak Day, an entire episode in Boston on Outbreak Day, an entire episode in Paris on Outbreak Day. We saw Jakarta, but what if we saw like Johannesburg? What if we saw Tokyo? What if we saw Shanghai? Like, there's all kinds of other ways that you can fill in and just kind of make it an anthology season that'd make it really, really fun. So that's my hope. Thank you so much, Bao Chu Lee, for your super chat. That's so kind of you. Thank you so much. I don't want to go more into what we'll see in part 2. Hopefully HBO, they've already announced season 2 of this show, so I'm excited to see what they do in season 2. Who do you think should play Abby? And how do we keep that person from going on social media? Because social media is going to be so mean to Abby. Hit me up in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts on who you think should play Abby, because it's going to be a tough character to play. But also, I think a really exciting, meaty role for someone to play. I don't think we're going to go all the way to, like, Seattle next season. Because there's kind of, like, another time jump. So I think that will be in season 3. I kind of don't want this show to go longer than, like, 3 or 4 seasons, though. I love it how, like, HBO's starting to do that with Succession. They ended it on they're ending it on a 4th season. Barry is ending on a 4th season. We don't need to go longer and longer. Broke, did you say Terry Crews should play Abby? Because that would be horrible casting. but he could handle it. Ronda Rousey, yeah, when the games came out, a lot of people were saying that Ronda would be great for it. I now love the bit of Terry Crews as Abby is great. Okay, we're not getting any serious casting options in here. Chat, you guys are wild. But you know what? Let's call it here because I've been hanging out with you guys all way too long, and I really just appreciate being able to discuss with you, especially these ideas of the cost of lies and the destructive power of love. I think love ultimately is a great thing, but just we got to remember that love can also drive people to do some wild things. So when we're questioning why people make what we consider to be bad decisions, when we're grappling with our own judgment for other people who do things that we disagree with morally, stop and consider for just a second before you continue judging them, because it's okay to judge people, I think. But before you continue judging them, just stop to think, put yourself in their shoes, and think, is there a way that they're doing what they're doing out of love? Out of love for someone? Are they trying to protect someone? Are they having a day where they're just like, did this person cut me off in traffic because they're rushing to make their kid's soccer game right now? Did this person, I know, now I'm just going to get people to be like, well, they threw coffee at the server. Maybe they just love their wife a lot. No, I just think that's a good way to practice empathy, is to just put yourself in someone's shoes and think about, could they be motivated by love right now? Because I think in order to vanquish our enemies, in order to truly reach people where they are, we have to imagine that they are the protagonists of their story and that they're just trying to do the right thing. They might just not know how to do it in the right way. So as soon as you're done here, please head over to the main New Rockstars channel and watch the Last of Us after show that they did on the break room, where Jessica and Brandon and Anna, I'm sure, had a lively conversation. As soon as I'm done here, I'm going to go over and watch it. And then my Easter egg breakdown is going to be coming out on the main New Rockstars channel tomorrow. And I would love to be able to continue talking about some prestige HBO series. We're thinking about doing Succession Season 4. I don't know if enough of you guys are really interested in that show, but, you know, maybe we can talk about it some way. Another quick super chat from Bao Chu Lee. Great adaptation, not perfect, but I still love it. I love how they were able to build on stories like Bill and Frank. I wish they would have split Game 1 into 2 seasons so they could expand the story. I think I agree with you there. It's just kind of hard if you're pitching the if you're pitching a show to HBO. You don't always know if you're going to get multiple seasons, so you got to figure, well, if we do one season, at least we can get it all on TV, and maybe that's as far as it goes. All right, I'm going to be ending the stream soon, but thank you all so much for joining us. It was such a delight to chat about this. I'm not going to be doing these live streams all the time. It can be hard to keep up with it. Like, it's hard to talk for like an hour and 15 minutes nonstop. But it's been a lot of fun, and I love being able to hang out with you guys and chat with you guys on Sunday nights. And be sure to support the deep dive. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. I'm amazed that we've had as much success and support as we've had so far, but let's keep this going. Head over to nerdriot.shop, grab yourself some deep dive merch. This hoodie, super warm and comfortable. The Vossmanat water bottle, I'm drinking out of this all the time. And take care of each other, love each other, and find someone when you're lost in the darkness. Look for the light, but just don't join any terrorist organization that's going to sacrifice kids. I love all you guys, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.